Think you know everything about China's emperors? How about the ones whose women were stripped naked and searched mouths and ears pried open for hidden weapons before a night of love? The ones who had them bundled up tight in a quilt, like a speechless parcel, and hauled on a eunuch's shoulder to the bedroom. Emperors who forced their concubines to drink poisons of mercury and arsenic, literally rotting them from the inside out, and who, for the slightest hint of rebellion, sentenced girls to death by 1,000 cuts in front of the entire harem. This is the history that scholars shamefully tuck away in footnotes. And now, you're about to learn the sickening truth of how a woman was turned into an object, and her body into the most dangerous battlefield on earth. So, have you caught your breath after that intro? Thought this was just some fairy tale about palace intrigue and silk robes? Ha! That was just the appetizer. The warm-up act. Now, buckle up tight, because we're diving headfirst into the muck. Straight into the place where the glint of gold mixes with the stench of fear and humiliation. Forget candlelit dinners. A date with the Chinese emperor, the son of heaven, was more like a trip to the butcher's shop, and you were the meat on display. Yeah, you heard that right. Every evening, special eunuchs would bring the ruler a silver tray. On it, a row of shiny, green jade tablets. Each was engraved with the name of a concubine. The emperor, without so much as glancing at a profile pic, would lazily flip over the tablet of tonight's winner in this gruesome lottery. Just flipping a tag, the way you'd swipe right on a dating app. And for this poor soul, her own personal hell was just beginning. She wasn't taken to a spa. She was taken for a ritual cleansing that was an act of total annihilation of self. Picture it. You're stripped naked, and it's no prelude to passion. Old emotionless eunuchs begin to wash you. And this isn't some gentle bath. They scrub, they scour, they douse you with water, as if trying to wash away not the dirt, but your very soul. And here's a detail that historians shamefully hide in the footnotes. After the bath came the full-body inspection. They'd stand the naked, trembling woman in the middle of the room. And those same eunuchs would inspect every millimeter of her body, every single one. They checked her hair, peered into her mouth and ears, examined the folds of her skin. Think they were looking for imperfections? No. They were looking for a weapon. A hairpin that could be plunged into an eye. A needle slick with poison. Any hint that this living doll might fight back was stamped out at the root. What did she feel in that moment? As alien, dead eyes slid over your body, as strange hands probed your most intimate places without a shred of ceremony. Ice-cold terror, burning shame, or maybe the blessed numbness that comes when you mentally disconnect from your own body, just to keep from going insane. But wait. The cherry on this cake of humiliation is yet to come, after the inspection. She wasn't dressed in lavish robes. Why bother? She wasn't a person, she was an object. She was wrapped tightly, completely naked, in a silk or fur quilt, like a human burrito. And in this shapeless bundle, the eunuchs would carry her on their shoulders through the entire palace to the emperor's bedchamber. She was forbidden from walking on her own. To walk is to have a will, to have legs that obey you. And she was just a thing. A parcel of flesh, waiting to be enwrapped. And so this bundle was placed at the foot of the imperial bed. The doors closed. Silence fell. But if you think the nightmare ended there, that some semblance of human intimacy began, you have no idea of the brutally humiliating set of rules that govern what happened after that quilt was tossed to the floor. You were turned into an object with a set of humiliating rules, right? The quilt. As soon as it hit the floor, a protocol kicked in that makes a military drill manual look like a nursery rhyme. The first and most important rule, drilled into every girl's head until her subconscious was wry and bleeding: you remain silent. No, you don't get it. Not just speak when spoken to. You do not make a single sound. Not a sigh, not a moan, not a whisper. Nothing. You are furniture, beautiful, warm, living furniture. You don't expect your bed to start a conversation with you, do you? Well, they didn't expect it from her either. Any sound was a sign of will, and an object cannot have a will. This is the part where your high school history teacher awkwardly skipped the page. Because admitting that the pinnacle of power, the father of the nation, turned a living woman into a voiceless object for his use, well, that kind of spoils the grandeur, doesn't it? Her job was to be a body, not a person. Think that's the rock bottom of humiliation. Buckle up. We're going deeper. The entire session lasted exactly 1 hour. Not 59 minutes, not an hour and 2 minutes. Exactly 1 hour. And you know who was keeping time? Outside the door and the freezing hallway stood the eunuchs. And they weren't just standing there. They had a water clock, and they were listening. Listening to every creak of the bed, to the silence, marking the moment the last drop of water fell, signaling the end of the procedure. Just imagine that scene. You're lying in the imperial chambers, surrounded by a luxury that blinds the eye, and you know that just beyond a thin screen stand 2 silent timekeepers, counting down the seconds until your body is no longer needed. Official history prefers to keep quiet about this, but it was a key part of the system. Why? To ensure that not even a shadow of human affection could ever develop. This wasn't a date. This wasn't a night of love. This was the performance of a state duty. On a schedule. And when that last drop fell, the door would swing open. No knock, no warning. Not escort her out. Not help her dress. Carry her straight from the bed, without giving her a second to compose herself, to say goodbye, or even just to breathe. She was simply removed. Back to her cage. Like an expensive vase taken down from a shelf, used to decorate a table, and then shoved back into a dark closet. But this entire well-oiled, soulless machine would glitch in one single circumstance. After that night, she became pregnant, and that's when the real game began, a game where the silent object had to learn to scream to survive. Because what was at stake wasn't just her life, but the life of her child, a child for whom dozens of other silent shadows were already sharpening their knives. Every move you made was tracked by spies. And that's when the real game began, a game where the silent object had to learn to scream to survive. Because what was at stake wasn't just her life, but the life of her child, a child for whom dozens of other silent shadows were already sharpening their knives. So, you thought she could now lock herself in her chambers and stroke her belly, waiting for a miracle. Think again. From that very moment, from the first missed drop of blood, she ceased to be even a shadow. She became a target. A target under round-the-clock, microscopic surveillance. Forget the CIA and the KGB. Those guys are just kids playing in a sandbox compared to the palace eunuchs. Because every move our pregnant heroine made, every breath she took, was watched by dozens of pairs of empty, expressionless eyes. And those eyes recorded everything. Official history prefers to keep quiet about this, but the chief eunuch kept special ledgers. Think they were for matters of state? No. They were for the most detailed and humiliating accounting book in the world. Date. Concubine's name. The exact time she was brought to the emperor. And get this, the exact time she was taken away. Down to the minute. They documented how long she was in there. The most meticulous chroniclers of this hell would even add notes: the sovereign was in good spirits, or the sovereign was fatigued. Can you believe that? Your encounter with a man, your intimacy, your potential destiny was coldly entered into a ledger like inventory. Why? Why such paranoia? It was all for one thing. To ensure that no one ever, for a single second, could doubt the paternity. A child wasn't a joy. A child was an heir. A political tool. And that tool had to have a crystal clear pedigree. So every act was documented as if by a notary. But wait, there's more. The surveillance started long before pregnancy. It was a system of total control over the female body. This is the part where your high school history teacher awkwardly skipped the page. Every single woman in the Forbidden City had her menstrual cycle tracked. Every single one, hundreds of women, and the eunuchs knew each of their schedules better than they did themselves. And reporting your unavailability was its own ritual of humiliation. No, sorry. I have a headache excuses here. For this, there were secret signs. In some dynasties, the woman had to tie a special red ribbon on her door. A sign for all to see today, I am clean. In others, she had to wear a silver ring on a specific finger. You'd walk out of your chambers, and on your hand would be a public announcement about what was happening to your body. Everyone would see. The other concubines, who now knew they had an opening. And the eunuchs, who would immediately scurry off to their ledgers to put a bold line through your name. Can you imagine that noxious cocktail of scents, expensive incense trying to mask the stench of fear, envy, and blood? And you walk through those corridors feeling like a piece of meat in a display case that has just had its price tag swapped out. And now, let's return to our heroine. Her cycle has stopped. The ribbon no longer appears on her door. The ring is not on her finger. And what does that mean? It means that in the eunuch's ledger, a new, special mark appears next to her name, tick-tock. The clock has started. The entire palace surveillance machine now focuses on her alone. Every piece of food she ate, every sip of water she drank, every complaint about her health, none of it was just a detail of daily life anymore. It was all evidence. Evidence in the case of the birth of an heir. And this is where those who were supposed to bring salvation entered the game, only to unleash a new, even more sophisticated kind of terror. Court physicians and midwives. You think they showed up with soothing potions and kind advice? Oh, you couldn't be more wrong. They came with cold instruments and even colder eyes, there to make sure the fetus was the right kind. And what they did to a woman if they found the slightest thing wrong with her condition. It would make even the most sadistic medieval torturers flinch. Sex wasn't pleasure, it was a political weapon. So, those butchers in doctors' coats, rummaging through a woman's insides for the wrong kind of child. You think they did it out of sheer sadism? Oh no, it was far more cynical than that. They were just cogs in a monstrous machine fueled by the human body itself. Because in that snake pit they called the Imperial Court, sex had nothing to do with pleasure. Nothing at all. It was a political weapon, the most powerful and the filthiest one there was. All right, buckle up. We're diving into the imperial bedroom. You think it was some erotic paradise? A sultan's dream from 1001 Nights. How? It was the coldest, most calculating office in the entire palace. Every evening, a special tray was brought to the emperor, laid out with silver or bronze tablets. Each one bore the name of a concubine. The sovereign would lazily point his finger at one. And voila, the choice was made. That's unlimited power, right? Pure, unadulterated might. Yeah. Right. This is the part where your high school history teacher would awkwardly flip the page, because the emperor's free choice was the most brazen illusion in the whole masquerade. The real puppet masters pulling the strings of this sordid affair were the eunuchs. They were the ones who curated this menu for the evening. They decided whose tablet would be placed on top, and whose would accidentally get lost at the bottom of the tray. Did a concubine's family not pay enough? Oh, what a shame. Her tablet seems to have fallen behind the cabinet. Did a rival faction offer more? Well, what do you know? Tonight the emperor will suddenly be overcome with passion for their candidate. Sex was currency, and the eunuchs were the bankers. And with that little bombshell, which blows the whole myth wide open, let's just take a breath and ask, why? Why such a complex, humiliating, and deceitful system? Was the emperor a complete idiot who didn't realize he was being manipulated? Oh, he knew, but the system was ingeniously cruel. It was designed to stop anyone from rising too high. Not one woman, not one family. The constant rotation, the backstabbing, the bribes. The intrigue, it all ensured that no single concubine would become the favorite wife for long. She wouldn't have time to amass too much power to become a threat. Official history prefers to sweep this under the rug, of course, because it shatters the beautiful myth of the all-powerful ruler. But let's get back to the woman herself. She's been chosen. You think she was led to the emperor's chambers to the sound of lutes? No, polite society doesn't talk about this. But we're not in polite society, are we? She was stripped naked. Completely. Her hair was meticulously searched for hidden pins or weapons. Her body was inspected from head to toe. Then, she was wrapped tightly in a blanket or a rug, naked, like some kind of parcel she couldn't even move inside of. And in that state, like a thing, like a piece of furniture, the eunuchs would carry her into the imperial bedroom and place her on the bed. No romance. No passion. This was a transaction, sealed not with a signature, but with sweat and humiliation. The eunuchs stood behind a screen, keeping time and making notes in their ledgers. Contact has been made. You think that's rock bottom? Spending the night as an object just so your family can get a lucrative contract or a position for your brother. That was just the interview. The entry ticket to a living hell. Because becoming a tool in the hands of eunuchs and sleeping with the emperor was only the first circle of this inferno, the real survival game full of poison, intrigue, and quiet murders in the cradle began the next morning, and it was far more terrifying than any cold instrument in a court doctor's hand. All right, strapped in. Because if you thought that medical exam was rock bottom, we're about to take a jackhammer to the floor. So, it's morning, you've survived. You're not just some village girl anymore. You're the emperor's woman. You're lying on silk sheets, soaked in the sweat of the son of heaven and your own sticky fear. All around you is gold, jade, servants rustling about, bringing you the finest delicacies. It's beautiful, isn't it? Yes. But this isn't a palace, it's a cage. A gilded one, sure. But no less a prison for it. And in this cage, there's only one rule. The emperor is a god. His word is law. His whim is your fate. And this, my friends, is where we get to the stuff they definitely don't teach you in history class. Let's get to know one guy a little better. The judging emperor, 16th century. The man was obsessed with immortality, you know. A classic. And he believed that special Taoist monks could cook him up an elixir of eternal life. What's in it, you ask? Oh, the good stuff. Red lead, as it was poetically called. In reality, it was a toxic cocktail of mercury and arsenic, the greatest hits from the periodic table. The kind of stuff that would make your hair fall out before you finished the glass. And guess who had to be the first guinea pigs for these vitamins? That's right, the concubines, dozens of young, healthy girls. He forced them to drink this poison every single day. Now, just imagine for a second, every day. They bring you this poison with a smile, and you have to smile back sweetly and say, "Thank you, my lord." You drink it, and you feel your insides slowly turning into a rotting, bubbling sludge. Your gums bleed, your teeth loosen, your skin breaks out in sores. You're decomposing alive, all under the guise of the great honor of helping the emperor achieve immortality. How long do you think they put up with it? One night, a group of desperate girls decided they'd had enough. They snuck into Jiajing's bedchamber while he slept and tried to strangle him with a simple silk hair ribbon. Just picture that scene, the silence, the snores of the almighty emperor, and a few trembling girls pulling on this ribbon, not even knowing how to tie a proper knot. Of course, they failed. They were caught. And now, for the punishment. This is the part where your teacher would definitely skip the page. All the girls, including those who simply knew but stayed silent, were sentenced to Linky. Death by 1,000 cuts. That's when they slowly, piece by piece, sliced the flesh from a living person in front of the entire goddamn harem, so that every single woman would see what happens when you disobey. This wasn't just a sentence. It was a lesson, written in the blood and flesh of your friends. But you think the horror only came from insane emperors, huh? Sometimes, being the favorite was even more dangerous. Just ask young Guy Fai, 8th century, the beloved woman of Emperor Xuanzong. He doted on her, showering her and her family with so many gifts that the state treasury was groaning. Poets wrote odes to their love. And then a rebellion broke out. The army mutinied. And you know who the soldiers blamed for all the country's problems? Not a cowardly general. Not corrupt officials. Her. The beautiful woman who was supposedly distracting the emperor from his duties. And here, as the detail historians shamefully hide in the footnotes, the soldiers simply didn't want to fight and found the perfect scapegoat. They gave the emperor an ultimatum: either she dies, or they overthrow him. And what did the loving man, the Son of Heaven, do? He chose his throne. He ordered his beloved to kill herself. The eunuchs brought her a silk cord. No trial. No investigation. Just the army's demand and the order from the man who had sworn his eternal love to her. They hanged her from a tree in a temple courtyard. A love that left nothing behind but a corpse swaying in the wind and a bunch of satisfied soldiers who got what they wanted. So yeah, in this gilded cage, you could die from a madman's poison, from a brutal execution for disobedience, or from the love of your master, who would trade you for his own skin in a heartbeat. But if you think this daily nightmare was reserved only for the chosen few women in the palace, you have no idea what kind of legalized hell ordinary girls had to endure on their wedding night. So here it is, the main history lesson they hid from you behind the glitter of any throne. There are always thousands of broken women turned into silent, disposable commodities. If you dig this kind of uncensored deep dive, where we rip the fancy clothes off of history, you know what to do. Smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next dose of uncomfortable truth. Now, get down to the comments, tell me, what other horrifying historical ritual involving women is everyone too afraid to talk about out loud? Let's build the ultimate collection of skeletons from the world's historical closet right here. Talk soon.